There's an interesting story here behind this building. The owner of the building is a partnership actually with a fellow named Peter Terian and George Moss. Peter had a little repair shop in the late 50s in Seacliff. He repaired imported automobiles, fine imported automobiles. Now, again, going back in history, you know, the only guys that really knew about fine imported cars like Mercedes were guys that came back from the war. So they had this repair shop, but they were forward-thinking, entrepreneurial guys. And it turns out that George Moss's uncle was a president or vice president of the Maserati Corporation, which was also in Glen Cove. Maserati wasn't making cars at the time. They were making tool and parts.
Oh, okay.
They all got together. The Maserati guy knew the Mercedes people in Manhattan. They all got put together. Again, there's a very classy, sophisticated guys that were interested in the finer things of life. And one thing leads to another. They get the only franchise to sell Mercedes-Benz on Long Island in Glen Cove, which is now where the Lexus dealer is. They become very successful. Again, this is the early 60s. You know, by the 70s, what's happening? You know, the American cars are starting to, the pinnacle of luxury in this country has always been Cadillac. Maybe not so much, not anymore, but it was. There's still that term, it's the Cadillac of the world, right? Well, you may remember in the mid-70s, there was a guy, it came to this point, the cars got so poor in quality, some guy bought an Eldorado, couldn't drive it at all. It kept going back and forth to the dealer. He got so fed up, he drove it to the parking lot and set it on fire. Became a nationwide thing. You know, who's to say that really what kicked off Mercedes, but Mercedes was becoming a more popular car. So they set out to design this, to use the Wizard of Oz term, this emerald city of car dealerships to sell these exotic luxury cars. So they, again, being smart guys, they went to several architecture firms, paid them money to develop. It was kind of a competition to design this building. And they didn't get anything that they liked. Peter played tennis with this guy and said, why don't you talk to this guy, Ulrich Franzen? We've used him before and he's an extraordinary architect, and see what he can come up with. So they tried him, and he came back with this concept. This is a bird's eye view of the building. They designed this concept of this super luxurious granite-clad building. This is what you're looking at here. And a workshop connected by this little link. So conceptually, it's that simple. And
that's the service right here.
That's the service. Yeah, that's the waiting area, and the workshop is over there. And what does Franzen do? He designs this beautiful Art Moderne, streamlined architecture for the showroom. It's two-story space on the inside, and you know, not like other showrooms that just have a run-of-the-mill storefront system with a glass wall. This is all made with architectural metals. This is an extraordinarily expensive building to construct. Some years later, they put an addition into the building that you'll see, and they started selling BMWs also. So there's an addition on the back of the granite building for BMWs. Later on, Mercedes said, listen, we don't want BMW there. The BMW has to go or you're not going to get your franchise. So they still have the BMW, they just moved it to Westbury. When Mercedes came to them and said this, Mercedes also wanted them to reclad this building like this, because that's what all of their showrooms look like all around the country, like along the 95 corridor. So we as the village said, no, this is an iconic building, can't do it. This sense of luxury just exudes here, and even the way they take care of their employees. But let's go inside. this really, really nice guy, Doug Foss, is going to give us a little tour. So is Doug around? Thank you, Miss.
Thank you for visiting with us. Our goal here is to give you a Neiman Marcus type experience when you buy a car. Mr. Terian, who's no longer with us, when he built this place, had that in mind, and his wife Juliana continues the business to this day as president and CEO. It is a very people-focused business. Grand architecture, very open floor plan. The effort was to make you feel like you weren't confined and that you could shop in a way that just allowed freedom and not really he didn't want anybody to feel captive. And couple that with a Mercedes brand, very high-end brand with great looking cars. It's really a fun place to spend some time. And so this is the new car showroom. We're going to take a quick peek back in the used car showroom, which is right down the corridor. If you're familiar with this area, it used to be a BMW dealership attached to the back of this building. And now they've moved it to Westbury because the brands were fighting with each other and the brands insisted they have their own space. A couple years from now, we're actually being forced into a whole remake. This is going to be blacked out. The whole inside will be black. That's a new look that they have, very modern type of setup, but that's 2027. It's about a $14 million renovation to get it to look like that because it's not built for that right now. So quite an investment on our end. But
without the outside, right?
Without the outside. We can't touch the outside. It's a landmark. All right, I'll bring you into the back showroom here. We're going to go right down this corridor. You can see the architecture is a little different back here, a little less wood, a little more industrial. This is what BMW wanted at the time. This will also get refit into the all black version of the showroom that we're going to be doing here in 27. So back lot right now is stuffed full of service cars, 400 cars back there. We're going to come outside here on the deck. We'll take over into service. This is the customer area where you'd come in and have your car serviced. So we can bring you up, let's show you the upstairs waiting lounge in the employee lunchroom. So we have 190 employees. And the owner is very employee focused. Which is a rare thing in the car business. So she's very philanthropic as well. So it's really a great place to work. So this is the waiting lounge. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring you out into the shop area and then show you what that's all about. So this is a shop. It's got 48 service bays in it. The very back has very tall doors to handle the Sprinter vans, which can be with the RV additions on them, can be quite large. So that's, you can see the doorways way down in the distance there for them to come in and out. These are electro-hydraulic lifts that are just sunk in the floor, and they sit in their own little capsules, so what little hydraulic oil is in them is contained for environmental reasons. Now we just take that metal plate off of the middle with those big bolts there, and we can service the pit, what we would call the pit, without interacting with any of the ground soils. This facility employs 190 people, and about 130 of them work on this side of the business at any given day. It's a super place to work. This is as good as it gets in the automotive industry on the dealer side. So it's a privilege to work here. And we take a lot of privilege in our keeping the spaces clean. I don't know if how many of you had any time in some auto shops. It's usually not this clean. And we appreciate that our guys take the extra time to, you know, to just take care of their own workspaces. We provide them toolboxes so that way everything looks somewhat uniform. But take a little bit further stroll here. So what I want to point out is cars are very modular today. When you're doing heavy work, this is an engine out of the car here, transmission underneath of the vehicle in the center of it there. This assembly here is called a subframe. So it's an actual structural part of the car. It mounts with these rubber mounts to the actual unit body structure, if you will. And sitting in this on these two mounts is the engine connected to it. So we actually can lower the engine out of the car by just taking that front frame down. That's how and they came up with this setup, not unique to Mercedes, to create efficiencies in mass production. So in the assembly line, the engines come already mated, sitting on top of the subframes and ready to just bolt right into the car. When they go in what we call a drive assembly. The plants are amazing. They're very choreographed. All production plants now, when it comes to vehicles, are very robotic. It's what they call just-in-time production. So what's going on in the plant is what's going on in the plant today. And as the 18-wheelers are coming up and they're unloading cargo with robots going in and literally going in and grabbing a pallet, pulling it back out. That pallet has got a barcode on it. They know where it's going to go. It gets unwrapped by another robot. The individual boxes on there, then a human takes the part out of the box and puts it in these like hanging racks. And then a robot comes and fetches it and puts it on a cart with its part number assigned to this specific VIN number of a car. And then it gets onto a robotic cart and it meets the car at a certain point in the production line. And they just pluck the part off and it goes right onto the car. So, and this is just happening with thousands of cars running through the plant in a day. It's just this gigantic choreographed play, if you will, that can't go wrong because you have to stop the whole line if something goes wrong.
Exactly.
So a lot of effort on the industrial engineering side of it, efficiency engineers. They look, how do I get 30 seconds out of the build of this car? How do I get 10 seconds out? It's a six-figure job to be a technician on a German product right now. It's really labor intensive, and you gotta be smart. A lot of education goes into these guys. And the battery electric vehicles, I was hoping we'd have one in here for service before you came, but it just worked. They happen to be a little reliable, so they're not in here as often as some of the gas-powered cars. But they're a little scary to work on. You know, you've got upwards of 800 volts and 1500 amps sitting in the pack. So it could deliver that 1500 amps in a millisecond. It's actually an electric vehicle up in the air over there next to the G-Wagon, the black one there. But it is kind of interesting to look at how the difference when you take a look at an older traditional suspension vehicle with gasoline power, and you look at the bottom of an electric vehicle, there's much simpler design. This whole center area here, all the way up to here. So this big black plastic rectangle, if you will, this is the battery. It's about that tall. It weighs about 1,800 pounds. And it's a structural member in the car. It sits in a casement because it has to be protected from water, and it has to be temperature controlled, heated and cooled. In 27, the first non-lithium batteries are going to make it to the market. Toyota will be first, and then the other brands will follow. The new batteries don't have that thermal issue, and they also have about a 40% better range. So this exact car, if we just swap the battery out, this car does about 340 miles. That car's going to do about 480 to 500 miles range. That's the first generation of that battery, and they're talking about that by 2030. They think the cars will be in the 800 to 1,000 mile range, which is phenomenal, because then that gets rid of this whole range anxiety thing that we all suffer with these. By the way, this is the famous G-Wagon that you see running all over the place here. We lovingly call it the ice cream truck. It looks a lot like one, but amazingly popular still to this day. I have a 3-year waiting list for them. Yeah, and the average transaction price on the AMG version is almost $250,000 for that vehicle. A lot of modern tech going on here. Any last second questions for me? We'll egress here.
Well, thank you, Doug.
Absolutely.